New York City police are searching for a motive after a gunman shot and killed 4 people in a Midtown office building. Mayor Adams says the gunman had help, and authorities found a note. Nate Foy is standing by with the latest. Nate.
Hey, Jesse. So workers are cleaning up as the signs of the shooting are still here. Take a look as workers are fixing some of the windows at this office building on Park Avenue that was the target of this gunman yesterday. And we are also seeing now, take a look at this video, the off-duty NYPD officer who was killed first in this attack, Didarul Islam. His body was just moved from the medical examiner's office to a mosque in the Bronx. Mayor Adams describes him as a man of faith who exemplified everything the city is about. He leaves behind 2 young sons and a pregnant wife. He was running security when police say the gunman Shane Tamura walked into the office building after driving to New York City from Las Vegas. Now, Mayor Adams says he was motivated by grievances against the National Football League and his belief that he has CTE, a degenerative brain disease. Mayor Adams also shared on the story today that he may have received some help. Listen to this.
Part of the weapons was purchased by an associate of the perpetrator, and he also purchased the firearm that was found in the car by using a carry permit that he received in Nevada. We're still looking into other aspects. 2 teams of detectives are going to Las Vegas.
So the gunman played high school football, but never in the NFL, and he ultimately shot himself in the chest, requesting in a letter that his brain be tested for CTE. We also have a new picture of the second security guard that he killed. Security guard Alain Etienne is described by his union as a, quote, dedicated security officer who took his job duties extremely seriously. Now, Officer Islam was the first one killed in the lobby, where Blackstone executive Wesley LePatner also was shot and killed. She leaves behind 2 children, and a 4th person who worked for Rudin Management, a real estate firm, was murdered on the 33rd floor before the gunman turned the gun on himself. Now, those who survived built barricades to protect themselves. You see, using office chairs, sofas, and tables, anything they could to separate themselves from the gunman. Now, there is a vigil coming up tonight at 8 o'clock in Bryant Park for all of the victims, and we'll be there. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Nate, thank you. This attack brings a new focus on blue city crime. The Big Apple's electing its mayor in November. And Zohran Mamdani's old tweets are coming back to haunt him. Like when he said this: "We want to defund the police," and leave it to CNN and Democrats to make it political.
Do they have any idea at this point who he is?
They do not know who he is. They know he is a male, possibly white. He's wearing sunglasses. He appears to have a mustache.
Shimon back with us on the phone on the scene. Shimon, you're here. John's reporting that they do know what he looks like. Male, possibly white, mustache, sunglasses in that building.
Let's talk about how this happened. This is happening because there are still assault weapons in our country.
We cannot keep meeting these moments with thoughts and prayers alone. We owe them action.
All right, Greg, what's been going through your mind after this horrific crime?
Well, that's the first time I saw the thing with Hochul talking about guns, and that gun is illegal in New York City. Even concealed carry permits don't allow you to carry that gun. But gun control laws do not discourage people who plan on killing others and killing themselves. What kind of penalty would dissuade that? The sad thing is it dissuades the rest of us, because we have lives, so we don't want a felony on us. We don't want to lose our jobs. We have lives. We don't want to go to jail. So you see how gun control laws hinders the self-defense of the law-abiding people, but will never, ever stop that. I mean, he drove with this gun across the country. As for, Zohran? Sure. Yeah. So he's running for mayor, and the first thing you do when you run for mayor is you get rid of all your left-wing luxury beliefs. He could have spouted all of this destructive nonsense because it enhanced his status in his elite bubble, but now he needs the rest of us. He needs the normal people. He needs the police officers. He needs the people outside his bubble. So he has to somehow abandon his cowardly virtue signaling and start to sound like a leader. But good luck with that. The crime itself feels like a sequel to Luigi. Yeah. And it's kind of like a mass shooting where it's influenced by the amplification of a previous narrative, not a fact, a narrative. You know, the lone male disgusted by a industry chooses a target and will live in infamy. And it worked for Luigi. He's got a musical. He's got a few adoring more than a few adoring fans in the media and elsewhere, women who want to marry him and so on. So it's not the facts that are seductive. It's the narrative that the media will take as they take liberties with reality, because that is more interesting than the facts that a madman killed somebody. You know, Luigi has a musical, Brian Thompson doesn't. Brian Thompson was his victim. And I think that's what bugs me about this. And I'm always glad how Fox focuses on the victims. I would rather know about, these families are destroyed. And the more we make the narrative, make the protagonist the killer in this narrative, make him the story, the more likely we forget about them, and we shouldn't.
Dana P.
Well, a couple of things from when I hadn't seen Kathy Hochul either. Over the weekend, there was that horrible stabbing at the Walmart in Traverse City, Michigan. And the similarity there is that innocent people going about their daily lives, either they're at work late, right, at 6:30 p.m., all these people are still working. The evil capitalists are still working. Then you have people going about their business on a weekend, going to Walmart, trying to do what they need to do to either shop for fun or shop for the necessities that their families needs. And so the question was kind of immediately, how can we harden all of these targets? And this, instead of saying, no, actually, how do you take mentally ill people, prevent them from getting guns, traveling across the country, and maybe you can't do it all. But to immediately just go, well, gotta have more gun control. It gives them a pass from having to do the things about keeping people away from innocents who don't want to go to jail, who are doing the right thing, who are at work, who are taking care of their families. The other thing is that I don't like the narrative either that, oh, it must be the NFL.
Yeah,
well, it's the NFL. I mean, well, he watched a documentary.
Yeah.
You know, legacy of denial. Wow, it was really understandable. The guy played high school football. So he's mad at the NFL because he has CTE. Obviously, he has other problems.
He's a dead loser.
Yeah,
he ruined
right.
families. I don't give a flying F about his brain.
And not only did he ruin those families, but I mean, the traumatization for people who were working there, people who didn't leave until after midnight because they were afraid to leave the building. They are completely traumatized in a building that is a landmark right there, right over there on Park Avenue. So I would go back to, like, if you're Kathy Hochul, if you're a leader, if you're Mamdani, you can't think about, oh, well, we have to count on the police when you want to, or you have to say, oh, well, I guess we just need more gun control, and that's your answer. It's pathetic.
Emily.
A few things. So Mayor Adams also talked about the police presence here in the city, and that's something that I love about it. I see NYPD everywhere. It's fantastic. So is there enough NYPD on streets? He said yes. But my question is, are they paid enough? Because Officer Islam paid with his life, but we weren't paying him enough to have one job, because that was his second job that he was doing there in the lobby. And I know that there are a lot of union negotiations and the like, and we have a different administration now, but I pray to God that there's an assessment of fiscal dollars here in the city, and that more of our tax dollars go to these brave men and women that all too often make this ultimate sacrifice. And can I say on that point too, that Bangladeshi immigrants have a huge presence in NYPD. There's well over 1,000 officers. They make up to over 15% of the traffic enforcement here. That's a large body. They have their own, not union, but organization that was started almost 10 years ago. They're incredible. And Officer Islam now leaves behind 3 children. I talked to NYPD Sergeant Joe Imperatrice, who founded Blue Lives Matter, who will be caring for the family like they care for every family that has someone that made the ultimate sacrifice in the course of their duties here at NYPD. And he said officers nationwide need to know that more than ever now, that they need to be the police. He said there are people everywhere that need them, and they always look for the men and women in blue when they feel they have no options left. More than ever, wear the uniform with pride and continue to do the noble work, he said, that Officer Islam and so many others set out to do and can't finish. And final point, actually one quick point before that. All the buildings out here, did you guys notice today, they all now have their security is outside. in this heat wave, in triple-digit heat. These guys are standing in the sun now. This has become this war battlefield. These guys are dying outside, just trying to protect those inside. Question was raised today, actually, by Piers Morgan on our show, and he talked about maybe the use of AI, because the callousness and the brazenness with which that monster walked across the plaza with his M4 was somehow okay, and he sort of questioned, could we use AI to maybe see that in all these cameras and act? And there's a company called Zero Eyes. It was founded by a Navy SEAL, and it's manned 24/7, 365 by former spec ops, and they're watching all of these cameras, and within seconds, they can deploy emergency services and local law enforcement, and they have a lot of examples of how they've saved lives with people walking up, on Ring cameras with guns and the like. So perhaps that's something that would be really useful moving forward.
Last word to you, Jessica.
I'm completely devastated and heartbroken by this. It's, where I grew up. I know people who know both of the female victims, Julia Hyman and Wesley LePatner, who seem like incredible people and members of their community. Julia Hyman, only 4 years out of college, just getting started. Wesley LePatner's 2 children away at camp. And this is the news that they get on a phone call. What a hero. I didn't know, and I still don't know much about the second officer, but Officer Islam, hearing that last night, that he has 2 kids and an 8-month pregnant wife, unimaginable. I don't know how women who go through this, and I know that this happens with a lot of couples where someone is serving, at home or abroad. I don't know how you carry on a pregnancy when you have lost your partner like that, and I wish her all the strength in the world. Jessica Tisch continues to impress at an astounding level to me. I thought Mayor Adams was also good yesterday, but as we are on the precipice of another election, I can't help but say again, I wish that Jessica Tisch had felt that she was ready. Right now, maybe she runs again in the next election, but I feel that she embodies the grace and the professionalism and the efficiency that a Mayor Bloomberg did, and I would welcome that. On the gun control front, what Kathy Hochul is talking about is the fact that when we did have an assault weapons ban from 1994 to 2004, we saw a decrease in mass shootings in this country, 70% less likely to happen. And then when the ban sunsetted, it spiked back up. That's what she's talking about. And you say, this is a crazy person, this isn't the norm. Of course that's the case. But he had a documented mental health history. He had his prescription meds on him, apparently, according to the reporting. How did he get a concealed carry license, even in Nevada? How are these things happening? And I don't think that it hurts the conversation or takes us backward at all to consider how we might prevent one of these things from happening. You will never be able to stop all of the lunatics. But if you stopped this one, we'd have 4 people that were alive today who certainly deserve to. And I don't see why that it's a bad thing to do that. Also, on the CNN commentator point where he said, maybe he's a white guy, I saw all over social media that the perpetrator was of Middle Eastern descent, and people were jumping to that before we found out that actually it wasn't the case at all. He's an American, half black, half Japanese. So,
yeah, that's social media, though. CNN should know better.
Okay.
Not the first time they made that mistake. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.